Do I actually exist? Am I really here? Or am I just some sort of phantasmical hallucination of the cosmos? What does it even mean to exist? You know, we all know the story of René Descartes. He realized that you can't trust your senses. He couldn't trust his. And I certainly don't trust mine. You know, my senses could be wrong. I might see something that wasn't actually there. I might hear something that someone didn't say. But the one thing that René Descartes could not doubt was the fact that he was doubting. He couldn't trust anything about what his senses were telling him, but he could trust the fact that they were telling him something. The fact that he was thinking could not be doubted, even if the thoughts were wrong. And so he came to the conclusion that because he was thinking, regardless of whether the thoughts were correct, he existed. And the way that he put this is as elegant as it is succinct. Cogito, ergo, sum. I think, therefore, I am. It is beautiful. But it's also wrong. Let's start with something that's uncontroversial. On the one hand, there are things that I do. I think. I speak. I sleep. And on the other hand, there are things that happen. The air moves. It rains. A bird sings. A plane flies overhead. These things are separate, right? A plane flying overhead is not something that I am doing. But am I actually doing the things I think I am? I don't take responsibility for a bird's song. I might be the one hearing it, but I'm not the one producing it. It's simply happening, and then I hear it. I might think something about it, like, wow, that's really beautiful. And I would take responsibility for that thought. I would take credit for that thought. I self-identify myself with that thought. And for this reason, I'm quite defensive about my thoughts. It's the same with my feelings, right? I associate my sense of self with my thoughts and feelings. But am I really doing them? Am I really the source of my thoughts and feelings? Well, if you've ever meditated, then you might realize that the line between things that I do and things that happen isn't really a line. At best, it's a smudge. And at worst, it's completely arbitrary. You can know this directly through your own first-person experience. All you have to do is pay attention. Simply pay attention to the actual nature of thought. See if you could become aware of a thought the moment it enters your head. The next thought. See if you can notice when it appears. Did you do that? That thought? Where did it come from? If it's gone, where is it now? what you'll realize if you pay attention is that far from thoughts being something that you're doing, thoughts in fact simply appear in consciousness the same way as sound does. I can hear a bird. It's, perhaps it started outside of me. Perhaps I know intellectually that vibrations traveled from the bird through the air to my eardrum and were then converted to electrical signals within the auditory circuits of my brain that became processed as sound. But fundamentally, it is an experience that appears within consciousness that I don't take credit for. And if you pay attention to thought, what you'll realize is that it too is simply an experience that happens within consciousness, except you are taking credit for it. But if you don't know where thoughts come from, and they simply appear in consciousness, then in what sense are you responsible for them? In what sense are they you? In what sense are you doing this? So what I realized through meditation, through paying attention to the nature of thought, is that it's not I think, therefore I am, cogito, ergo, sum. It's I hear voices, therefore I am, right? It's audio, ergo, sum. I hear. And maybe not in the literal sense of like hearing. And perhaps you don't have an inner monologue, perhaps you have aphantasia and you don't see images either, but no matter what your personal subjective experience of thought is, you are thinking. But it's not you doing it. Thoughts are appearing in some way. And that is how you know you exist. Audio, ergo, sum. I hear voices in my head. Therefore, I am. Now, this kind of seems like a distinction without a difference, right? Like, you could say that Descartes wasn't literally saying, I'm the one thinking and that's what means I exist. He was simply pointing to the idea that the very fact of thought itself meant that he exists. And I have no disagreement with that whatsoever, but I think the phrasing is important, not so that we can rewrite the philosophy books, but just to offer, I think, a more subtle perspective on this, because I think that the idea, I think, bakes in a fundamental misunderstanding of the nature of reality to our idea of existence itself. The idea that I am a separate ego that controls things, right? Some sort of spectre that lives inside my head, behind my eyes and between my ears, sat at the control desk. Some sort of ghostly pilot of this giant fleshy mech suit that is my body. A being that does things like thinking and speaking and consciously chooses these things in a way that just doesn't make any sense. And truly does not even align with your own first-person experience. And that's why I'm not going to get into dualism and what that actually means, because I think that the philosophy of it is irrelevant right now. You can see for yourself, through your first-person experience, if you just pay attention, that you're not the one thinking. Thoughts are simply appearing inside your head. And this has been an immensely valuable insight for me. Because it's this sense of identification with our thoughts that often is the reason we can't let go of them, the reason that we dig in and defend positions that we realize are wrong, the reason we have emotional connections to the things that we think about, right? The reason that when someone challenges an idea that we have, we feel defensive about it, because they're not just challenging a noise that popped into our head, they're challenging me, my identity. And so I'm afraid, and I need to defend myself. And so when I don't have that sense of identification with thoughts and feelings, it's much easier to relax, to be less defensive, less egocentric. And I think that makes me a better person to be around, both for myself and others. I prefer my own company, and I think probably other people prefer my company this way around too. So yeah, I exist. But maybe not in the way that I originally thought I did. I really hope that this is of value to you as well.